Karen called FBI on my property. I'm the FBI director. I didn't buy this land to impress anyone. I bought it to disappear. After 26 years in federal service, chasing ghosts, shutting down trafficking rings, dismantling domestic terror cells, I wanted silence, stillness, a place where every damn leaf didn't whisper secrets, somewhere I didn't have to wear a badge on my chest or a shield on my back just to feel safe. So I bought 120 acres of open land in Dry Mesa, Colorado, nothing but sky, cottonwoods, old pines, and a dirt road nobody bothered unless they meant to. It wasn't glamorous. There were no marble counters, no security gates, just a rebuilt barn, a steel-framed home, and one hell of a view. I'd traded my Deet Series suits for worn jeans and a pickup. A man shouldn't have to answer to anyone out here. But I was wrong, because Karen moved in next door. She arrived in a Lexus with out-of-state plates and a clipboard the size of a battleship. Her property, a 5-acre slice carved off an old ranch development some land broker had tried to turn into a luxury enclave. Most people passed. Karen didn't. She bought in and immediately started acting like she owned the whole damn valley. She called herself acting president of the Dry Mesa Community Review Board, whatever that meant. It wasn't even a real HOA. The documents were dissolved after the developer backed out 10 years ago. But Karen didn't care. She started putting flyers in people's mailboxes, signing them with HOA authority, and fining folks for unauthorized fencing or nuisance-level tractor noise. She had no legal power, just gall. I didn't say anything at first. My job had taught me patience. I'd survived stakeouts in Beirut and political crossfire in Langley. I could survive a neighborhood narcissist, but the day she set foot on my property without asking, clipboard in hand and attitude in tow, that patience thinned like old rope. It was early spring. My crew and I were unloading fencing panels by the main pasture. I'd hired 2 local ranch hands to help expand the training corral for my horses. Karen came marching across the gravel like a deputy in her own made-up war. "You can't build that," she barked, voice echoing through the pines. I didn't even look up. Why not? It's not approved by the HOA. That's why I finally turned. There is no HOA. She clutched her clipboard like a holy text. There is now, and as the acting president, I'm issuing you a stop order. Lady, this isn't a development. It's private property. My name's on the deed. You're trespassing. Her smile didn't falter. You'll regret disrespecting authority. That night, the lock on my gate was clipped. The next morning, my mailbox was smashed. I have no proof it was her, but the timing was no coincidence. Still, I let it go until last week, until she tried to have my vehicle towed. It was a Monday morning, sky clean as paper, and I had driven my black government-issue Suburban back from a weekend training with my old team. I parked it beside the barn, same place I always do, badge tucked in the glove box. When I stepped out with coffee in hand, I saw the tow truck backing down my gravel driveway. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. The driver, mid-30s, tattoos up both arms, rolled down the window. Said this vehicle was abandoned. Got a call from HOA enforcement to impound it. "You got paperwork?" He looked sheepish. Just the address and plate. That's a government vehicle. Son, registered to the Federal Bureau of Investigation." He paused. "Wait, you're FBI." I opened the driver door and pulled out my ID case. I didn't flash it like in movies. I held it steady and looked him in the eye. "Director Alan Hayes, that's my vehicle. You were about to tow federal property. Now, who gave you the order?" He gulped. "Some lady named Karen said it was a neighborhood code issue." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just told him to back off and leave, and then I made a single phone call. Karen had crossed a line she never even knew existed. I wanted to give her one last chance to walk it back. I walked next door around noon, knocked, waited. She opened the door with that same smirk she wore like perfume. "You're lucky the tow truck guy didn't press charges for verbal assault," she said. "You tried to tow a federal vehicle from sovereign property. That's a federal offense." She shrugged. I saw a black SUV with dark windows parked near the barn. How was I supposed to know? You walked past the sign that said private property. There's no legal HOA here. Karen, you're harassing residents, and I've had enough. Her smile twisted. Oh, so you're threatening me now? No, I said calmly, but I suggest you read up on impersonating a legal authority. Because if this continues, you're going to have real federal agents at your door. She scoffed. Please, I've already filed a report. In fact, I made a call this morning, said a strange man was storing surveillance vehicles behind a barn. You'll be lucky if they don't show up with a warrant. And that's when I realized she actually did it. She called the FBI. On me. The FBI director. The irony was so sharp I could have cut lumber with it. But here's the thing. Karen didn't know who I was. She knew I lived alone, didn't attend her meetings, and didn't respond to her pretend fines. That was enough to make me a threat. To her, I was just another man on land she wished she controlled. To me, she was about to learn how deep a mistake like that can go. Karen thought she was above consequence. She wore that power walk of hers like it came with sirens. Clipboard clutched tight, pastel sweatsuit freshly ironed, sunglasses oversized like a celebrity evading truth. And that morning, I knew she had just crossed from annoying into dangerous. Because she didn't just threaten me. She actually called the bureau. It started with a knock on my gate at 10:37 a.m. Not the front door, the gate. I was brushing down one of my geldings when I heard it, three hard clangs on the metal. I stepped out of the barn, dust on my boots, gloves still on. Three dark SUVs lined up like chess pieces, idling behind a local deputy's cruiser. Two agents were already out, glancing around with practiced alertness. Tactical black suits, earpieces, the real deal, and right behind them, Karen, waving. I took a deep breath and walked toward the gate. My property had two entrances. This one wasn't even public. But somehow they'd been directed right here. An agent raised his badge before I could speak. Sir, we received a civilian report about a suspicious vehicle on site. Mind explaining? Karen stepped forward. He's got surveillance equipment in that black Suburban. I told him he's watching people, probably has drones. There are wires going from the barn to the house. The agents ignored her. Their eyes shifted to me. I didn't flinch. I reached slowly into my coat and pulled out my badge. Director Alan Hayes, Serial 2743 FBI 11. This property is federal registered under my security clearance, and that vehicle is part of an ongoing authorized operations fleet. Both men froze. The lead agent blinked. Director Hayes' Karen laughed behind them. Yeah, right. But the other agent took a step back and lifted his wrist to the comm in his ear. I heard one word confirming. 30 seconds of radio silence later, his expression changed. He stiffened, then turned to Karen. Ma'am, he said, carefully, you called us to investigate a vehicle belonging to the director of the FBI. Karen hesitated, still gripping her phone like a trophy. I didn't know who he was. He was building things. And I thought the lead agent spoke now. Ma'am, you made a false report on federal equipment and personnel? That is a serious offense. You are also trespassing. What? No, I'm the HOA president. There is no HOA here, I finally said, stepping forward. And your fake patrol, your fake fines, your little clipboard routine. It stops now. Her eyes darted. She saw it. The power shifting. The agents weren't looking at her anymore. They were standing behind me. I thought it might end there, some public shame. A firm warning. Maybe she'd retreat into that overpriced cottage and reflect. But no, Karen doubled down. The very next day, 2 letters were hand-delivered to my gate. One was addressed to resident with a demand to appear before the HOA violation board. It was signed President Karen Whitmore, DMCRB. The second was addressed to whom it may concern and claim one Alan Hayes had impersonated a federal agent and threatened a local citizen. It was mailed to the state governor's office. You read that right. Karen tried to report me again. I handed both letters to the Bureau's Internal Security Division. They flagged it, logged it, and advised me to proceed carefully. I knew what that meant. Karen wasn't just a busybody, she was poking a bear that could bite back. 3 nights later, someone cut power to my barn. My exterior cams picked up movement at 2:12 a.m. Two men in reflective vests, no visible logos. They cut through the fencing behind the pine row and approached the generator panel. They didn't realize they were being watched. I had the footage in 4K, heat mapped, and auto-tagged by facial pattern software. They were from a landscaping firm Karen had recently contracted to handle community beautification. Beautification that included trespassing. Now the next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the sheriff, added the footage to our system, and called my deputy chief of field ops. I'm not asking for muscle, I told her. I'm asking for protocol. She sighed. You sure you don't want us to handle it directly? No. I need to know how far she'll go. Alan, she said, most people wouldn't pick this fight with you unless they were delusional or they were covering something. And that stuck with me. Covering something. So I looked deeper. Dry Mesa's old development records were public, but the most recent revival of the HOA had no legal filings with the county, no registration, no tax ID, just flyers, fines, and scare tactics. But someone was collecting money. I drove into town and spoke with two neighbors who had paid membership dues $600 a year because they feared Karen's threats about property liens. One of them, a retired nurse, said Karen had warned her, if you don't pay, we'll tow your car and shut off your utilities. Utilities, Karen had zero legal access to that, but she had convinced a handful of residents she did. I reviewed bank records, followed a trail of invoice numbers. The fake HOA was routing payments through a shell account listed under Dry Mesa Environmental Wellness Trust. That trust's agent of record, Karen Whitmore. I had enough now, not just for trespassing, not just for impersonation, but for fraud, wire fraud, extortion, and I hadn't even leaned on her yet. I held off for one reason: the people. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about a pattern. How often these self-appointed tyrants used fear and phony paperwork to control others, especially in rural America, where people mind their business and don't have lawyers on speed dial. If I wanted to end her reign properly, I had to expose the whole thing. So I called a meeting, and I invited the entire town. Flyers went up on real bulletin boards. No stamps, no email blasts, just old-fashioned word of mouth. The flyer didn't even say my name. It just read Community Meeting on Property Rights Abuse and Fraud, 7 p.m. Bring your stories. Karen saw the flyer that morning. She posted a counter flyer within 2 hours. Unauthorized meeting violators will be fined. The audacity. By 6:45 p.m. that night, 47 people had shown up. We met in the firehouse hall, folding chairs, coffee, no politics. Just tired people looking for someone to listen. And I listened. A man said Karen had ordered his driveway painted with red X's. A woman cried when she said Karen sent a tow notice to her 15-year-old son's parked truck. A couple shared that Karen threatened them with CPS after they left a swing set visible from the road. By 7:30 it was quiet, so I stood. I didn't tell them I was the director at first. I just told them who I was. My name is Alan Hayes. I moved here last year. I came here to get away from bureaucrats and bullies, but I didn't escape them. They just wore different uniforms. A murmur. People nodded. I know the law. I know when it's being used and when it's being faked. What's happening here? That's not just wrong. It's illegal. Then I opened the binder I brought. Evidence, documents, the false account, the fines, the recordings. I ended with the words, we can stop this. Together. But we can't stay silent anymore. The crowd didn't clap. They stood. And Karen. She stormed in 30 seconds later screaming about civil suits and defamation, but this time nobody listened. Not even the sheriff's deputy who followed her in. I didn't think she'd escalate again. Not after being humiliated in front of half the town. Not after the sheriff politely asked her to leave the community meeting she tried to shut down. But if Karen had one fatal flaw, it was this: she only backed down when it was too late. 3 days after the meeting, I was on my front porch sipping coffee, watching the sunrise over Dry Mesa. when I heard the rumble of engines. I figured it was delivery trucks. Instead, it was a black Dodge Ram with stenciled magnetic logos on the side, DRI Mesa Property Patrol behind it. A silver Tahoe and a white van pulled up. 5 men in mismatched black tactical vests stepped out. Aviator glasses, radios, clipboard. One even had a belt holster with a paintball gun inside. And leading them, Karen. Her voice crackled through a walkie-talkie before her feet even hit the gravel. Team Alpha, breach the perimeter line. This is a formal citation under Dry Mesa Community Restoration Bylaws. Article 6. They were coming to inspect my barn, without a warrant, without jurisdiction, without a single drop of sense. I set my mug down and pressed the radio clipped under the porch rail. Activate protocol, I said quietly. 5 seconds later, 2 unmarked black SUVs pulled up the other way, fast and tight. Real agents stepped out this time. No vests, no cosplay. Just calm, confident silence and serious faces. One of them gave a nod and stood by the gate, blocking entry. Karen froze. Her little patrol boys looked at each other, suddenly unsure whether they were still playing soldier or stepping into an actual op. What is this? Karen snapped. I have the right to inspect this structure. It's in violation of you're on federal property, I said, walking toward her. You're impersonating law enforcement, and you're about to be read your rights if you don't walk away right now? She scoffed. I filed the paperwork. You're just bluffing because you don't want anyone seeing what you're hiding. That's when I pulled it out. My credentials, federal ID, FBI director seal, gold lettering, laminated and real. One of the fake patrol guys actually stepped back and muttered, "Oh, shh." Karen's face turned white. The agent at the gate approached. Ma'am, you and your party are unlawfully trespassing and impersonating enforcement personnel. We strongly advise you vacate this area immediately and cease all further actions under the false authority of any unregistered HOA entity. You can't do this, she said, almost a whisper now. I have connections. I know people. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just took one slow step forward. You're not the only one who knows people, I said, but the difference is mine carry real badges. She turned on her heel, muttering something under her breath. Her patrol followed, sheepishly getting into their cars. One of them glanced back at me. He nodded. That should have been it. It should have ended there. But narcissists like Karen don't go down without a final act of delusion. That night, she posted a video on her neighborhood Facebook group, a shaky selfie rant titled, "The Deep State Has Infiltrated Dry Mesa." In it, she claimed she was targeted for exposing illegal surveillance and that rogue agents were using our town to launch psyops on conservative communities. The post got 62 shares, but it also got flagged. The FBI's cyber division pinged me within hours. She's just barking. I said, let her. No, sir, the agent replied. She's using keywords that have triggered a federal review algorithm. This may go beyond HOA fraud. I reviewed her metadata. The laptop she used was linked to encrypted communications between her and 2 known fringe militia groups, one of which had been under surveillance since a weapons stockpiling case in 2022. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about fines or fences. Karen was laundering authority using the HOA as a front for something more dangerous, and I had to find out exactly what. I met with the sheriff again. We went over everything. The phony bylaws, the shell account, the intimidation, the false patrols, and now, the possibility of ties to extremist networks. She's not just a Karen, he said grimly. She's a fanatic. I need warrants. I told him. Surveillance, communications, financials. I want to see everything, and I want her stopped before she drags someone innocent into this. You've got him, he said, and my full support. We executed the quiet search at 4:12 a.m. Karen's property, a gaudy colonial knockoff with security cameras and fake eagle statues lit up in blue the moment the Bureau arrived. She opened the door in pajamas, screaming something about sovereign rights and constitutional immunity. She was detained. And inside we found enough. Enough to move to federal charges, enough to shut it down. The arrest made local news before I could even finish my second cup of coffee. Karen Whitmore, HOA president and self-proclaimed community security consultant, was photographed being led into the back of a Bureau SUV with a bedsheet over her head like some scandalized mobster from the 80s. The press couldn't get enough of it. Neither could the internet. Reddit lit up, Twitter caught fire, and the town of Dry Mesa, well, folks started talking because it wasn't just the fake patrols anymore, or the fines, or the threats. It was the discovery of the storage locker outside town where Karen had been stockpiling surplus uniforms, of the burner phones she'd used to coordinate a mailing list of enforcement subscribers, of the accounts she'd used to collect over $187,000 in illegal HOA dues from neighbors who never actually voted for her leadership. This wasn't a woman enforcing rules. It was organized fraud with an authoritarian twist, and now it was unraveling in real time. That night, the town hall overflowed. People who'd never spoken up before came forward. Mr. Bailey, the retired school janitor, showed photos of fines he'd been issued for his flag being too high. Nina, a single mom, said Karen accused her teenage son of gang affiliation because he wore a hoodie near the mailbox. And an older couple, the Marshes, shared how they'd been forced to pay $2,500 in non-compliance fees for having an unapproved cactus in their front yard. They were all lies, invented rules. Printed on letterhead, Karen designed herself at the Office Depot down the road. But she'd made them feel powerless, ashamed. Until now. I didn't speak at the meeting. Didn't need to. Because the town spoke for itself. And something shifted that night like a fever finally breaking. The next morning, the sheriff invited me to his office. "Wanted you to see this yourself," he said, sliding over a tablet. It was a live security feed Karen's house, except the sign on the gate had changed. It no longer said private HOA property. It had FBI crime scene tape wrapped around it. A federal injunction froze all her assets, her accounts, her records. And then came the kicker. "You were right," the sheriff said. This was bigger than HOA fraud. He pulled out a manila folder and laid it flat. Inside were emails. Between Karen and two names I recognized from domestic extremism watch lists. They'd been trading money, resources, and messages about reclaiming suburban territory. It was never about grass height. It was never about fences or sheds or flags. It was about control. And Karen was trying to build a micro-regime, one household at a time. We issued a formal statement the following day. The FBI had officially dismantled the fake HOA organization, launched a task force for investigating suburban racketeering, and frozen all accounts tied to Karen's network. Her HOA had been quietly growing across 3 counties, with shell board members and legal-sounding names like Civic Enforcement Corps and Suburban Integrity Task Force. She had backup, but not anymore. The press swarmed my ranch later that week. I didn't give a speech. I just said one sentence: justice isn't about control, it's about trust. And I let the rest speak for itself. Back in town, the people held a public vote. This time, for a real community council. The Marshes were nominated, Nina too. Even old Mr. Bailey got enough write-ins to win a seat. Karen's old patrol route's gone, replaced by volunteers who walked dogs and picked up trash, and the signs, those fake HOA signs that used to sit on every mailbox, burned in a fire pit, one by one, while the community watched not in anger, but in renewal. It wasn't the prison sentence that shocked people. It was how normal she looked in the orange jumpsuit, like she still thought this was just another HOA meeting she was about to take over. The courtroom was packed that day, standing room only. Karen sat stiff and defiant, flanked by 2 federal marshals. Her legal team had tried every last stunt, claiming she had mental fatigue, legal misunderstandings, and even once, foreign manipulation via social media. But none of it worked, because facts don't bend to clipboard rules, and the evidence, it was overwhelming. When I took the stand, I didn't give the speech I had planned. I looked her right in the eyes and said, "You didn't just defraud the law, Karen. You infected trust between neighbors, between friends, even between parents and their children. That's what this was always about, and now the truth stands taller than your fences ever could. The courtroom went still. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to say something, but she didn't, because it was over. Karen Whitmore was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for fraud, impersonation of federal authority, cyber harassment, and conspiracy. Her co-conspirators. Some ran, some flipped, some were arrested that same day in coordinated sweeps across 2 states. The web she built was bigger than any of us thought, but not stronger, because truth's not afraid of sunlight. After the trial, I returned to the ranch. Things felt lighter now. Neighbors came by to help clean up the debris from her illegal patrol sheds and fake inspection posts. The Marshes brought over homemade lemonade. Nina's son, Jaden, helped replant my fence line where Karen's signs used to hang like warnings. But the biggest surprise, the letter that arrived 1 week later, from Washington, it was from the president, a personal note, thanking me not just for exposing a domestic fraud ring, but for restoring civic trust in a time when so many feel powerless. I read it twice before setting it on the mantle, right next to my frame badge, because I wasn't just the director of the FBI. I was a neighbor, a citizen, and damn proud of it. Months passed. The HOA Karen chapter faded from national headlines, but not from memory, not here. We started holding monthly meetings under the community pavilion. No more secret boards or hidden fees, just people, talking honestly. We passed something called the Neighborhood Bill of Rights. It guaranteed no one could enforce property codes without public oversight, no fines without town consent, and no surveillance without court approval. We even got it passed at the county level. Karen's war gave birth to something she never expected: real democracy, built not on fear, but on trust. And me, I still live on my ranch, still raise my horses, still wave to Jaden when he bikes by on his way to college night classes. Sometimes, people drive past my land just to see where it all started. The gate Karen once called suspicious federal fencing. It's still there, only now there's a sign under it that reads, "Truth lives here, HOA free." We often think power wears a uniform, carries a badge, or hands out citations. But real power listens, serves, protects. Karen tried to control a community with fear and fake rules, but in the end, it was unity that beat her, and truth that buried her authority. Have you ever been pressured by fake authority? Do you believe communities should have more say than self-appointed leaders? Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about justice, fairness, and what real neighborhood power should look like.